a tactical 40K. I've been sick, like you would not believe. And otherwise, I was gonna do, which what I'm gonna do right now is go in a little bit more in depth in that Vanguard Spearhead detachment if you're a Space Marine player. Now, this is supposed to be the Raven Guard type detachment. Their rule, which I'll pull it up here, but it's essentially outside of 12 and out, you're -1 to hit, and you get the benefit of cover. It's like one of the only defensive detachment abilities. It also, this detachment, I'll just say this before we get into it, it's one of the only ones I can see that's not really super additive to what you're already existingly running as a Raven Guard-ish unit. And what I mean by that is that if you're running a Raven Guard unit now, you're not getting the extreme benefits of like some of these other detachments are for units that you're already running. I know it probably sounds confusing, but this one actually allows you to run other units that you normally wouldn't run as more of a Raven Guard, or giving him some Raven Guardy, sneaky, beaky type characteristics by having that kind of like pseudo stealth, and then also some of the stratagems, which if I can ever pull these up, I know what they are off the top of my head, but I'm going to pull them up so I read them correctly. So we'll start off with, which that detachment rule is Shadow Masters. And I think I've already talked about this a number of times, but you have things like, but we're going to go in a little bit more in depth in some of the units that keep being talked about. Like I said, this is more additive to those units. You can incorporate them, but like what you're running, like I was running your Shrike or whatever. This doesn't really do much for Shrike besides what Shrike does for like a Vanguard Vet Squad. He's Phobos, so you can run them as Phobos and do some of the little shenanigans you have in here. But you can already pick him up off the board. He's already given them loan up. He's already got, his thing going on. But what does this do? Okay, so some of the enhancements, Blade Driven Deep, if you haven't heard of that one, that allows you to, put the infiltrate keyword essentially on a character that allows him to infiltrate the unit. So you can do anything, almost. So people have been talking about aggressors, terminators, even jump packs, guys with jump packs, throwing them off the board, and then getting in the combat. Eradicators are another one that one's nobody's talking about, but Eradicators with like a Biologus, and then so you're running lethals on that, and then you could also hit them if you had like Captain for free, Strike from the Shadows, which allows them to hit on, because you got the multi-melt that's hitting on 4s. Now, if they're sitting still, that's 3s, then a 2. And then you got an extra AP, so you're talking AP 5. You're essentially just, shots are going through. So there's all kinds of cool things you can do with that. But here's one of the tactics that everybody keeps talking about, throwing them off the board with this Blade Driven Deep, which I have a feeling it's not going to work out so much like that. But I would imagine you throw them off the board in advantageous spots, not necessarily that center objective. You find that, like we talked about before, some of the military terminology, we can call it surfaces and gaps. You find those gaps in the enemy and to be able to interdict them, so you can go and get in there real quickly, or you do want to set up there and like have a stronghold. It just depends on what you're going up against. So you got to look at that Blade Driven Deep as a little bit more tactically minded and not just assume that you're going straight up to the center objective. You got to be able to utilize that for other things. But anyway, probably one of the stronger ones. Gives you a little more, another tool in the toolbox, to be able to put a heavy unit, a unit with some power up the board, and get in people's face. The other one, you got Ghostweave Cloak, which is like, you get to pick a character you want to be alone op, essentially. It's only 15 points, and you can have them run around the board. Now, immediately off the top of my head, this comes, like, you have Jump Pack Captain. People keep talking about the Gravis Captain, maybe. I like Jump Pack Captain, and I like Phobos Lieutenant, and here's why. They both got Deep Strike. They both run around the board pretty well. That Jump Pack Captain, your guy running around with 12 inches at a time. Throw him with Thunderhammer or whatever, he can go punch. He can maybe throw off a shot here. Same with the Phobos Lieutenant. He throws a shot off here. But the thing about both of those, as opposed to like the Phobos Captain, which, yeah, his gun's a little better, but you can only run him around. Excuse me. You can only run around with the Lieutenant. With one of these stratagems later on, you could pick him and another unit up because he's a Phobos and deep strike him. Or you could just hold them in the beginning of the turn and deep strike them. Now you got a lone op in their backfield that they don't think about, and if you need to score certain things, you got him. And he pops a shot off here and there. And then when he shoots, he can move D6 inches, which is also a stratagem which would allow him to move straight 6, but why use the CP when you can just D6 him and shoot, move, get out of a little bit of the range to keep him blown up. There's all kinds of stuff you can do with him. You got execute, redeploy, which is another Phobos only, which essentially is the same thing as running an instigator bolt rifle on an eliminator squad. It's the same thing as we just talked about, only it's straight 6. So you put them on whatever a Phobos lieutenant or a captain who's attached to a unit, and shoot, move. So it's good. It's not bad. Shadow War Veteran. That's your Vect. Like, you can pick a battle tactic and make it cost more. Granted, this is like 30. I think it's 30 points. It's a lot, but it's useful. Now, what are you putting this on? A lot of guys are talking about it. I can't disagree with this, as putting it on your combi lieutenant who's a lone op, and you send him in the back, Vect something that he's picking a target, picking a objective, and making it reroll one wound rolls of 1, and then you can also like stratagem that with a deadly. There's all kinds of stuff you can do. But anyway, put it on that. You can put it on if you've got a Phobos librarian that's just going to be sitting in the backfield. Probably not going to get into much until later in the game. You can put it on to him, and he can throw it out there. I don't know. That one is not in particular. Just put it on a character and long enough that he can live, so you can Vect something. You can maybe run another Calidus, and you're double Vecting things. You can make certain armies really hurt when that utilize a lot of stratagems. Anyway, so we go to stratagems. This is kind of there's some stuff in here you can do. Let's just put it like Deadly Prize is one of my favorites. You can sabotage an objective, and what I mean by this is one of my favorites. This is like a tactical. You got to be tactically minded on this one. So if you had that center objective and you're blade driven deep, you put that unit up there, and even if you go first and you're not rushing that enemy unit in front of you, or you go second or whatever, it doesn't matter. In a command phase, you go ahead and just set the Deadly Prize, and it's basically a Claymore Mine on there, D3 mortal wounds to anybody that lands on there until the end of the turn, or it's actually until your opponent controls it at the end of a turn. So every time he moves on there, and you can have multiple units moving, you can have the same unit moving on D3 mortal wounds, but you can set it up, and it stickies the objective, so you can actually have the unit there, a blade, or if you're blade driven deep up there, hypothetically, you bam, in a command phase, set it up, bam, move, or set up ambush so that he hits that, and then you hit him again with some more mortal wounds, maybe some jump back intercessors, or you set it up and you leave it, and you bring up a force behind it. There's things you can do with this thing that you can amplify its effects. You can, when you combine this with other units attacking an enemy unit, you can really make this thing, what do you call it? Military terminology. I'll think of it. We'll talk about it later. But anyway, you're just amplifying the effect of that army. It's force multiplier. That's what it is. You can turn this into a force multiplier. Of course, you got Armor Contempt. Surgical Strikes, I'm not really too keen on this one because this one's like 2 CP unless you're running a captain for free, where you can use in melee precision. Situational. I know some guys really like it. Me, I'm not. Usually I'm precisioning with ranged weapons. Anyway, okay, so we'll skip down and go to Surgical or Strike from the Shadows. I like this because you can put this on a lot of shooting units outside of 12. You can throw this on eliminators. Next thing you know, you got an AP, whatever, 4 or 5, weapon. They're hitting on 2s. You put this on your plasma inceptors or just bolter inceptors. That's additive. Now, this also, granted, you wouldn't want to just throw units in that are bad, and then this one strategy makes them good, but suppressors, now you can actually get them to hit on 3s, and you got a 2 AP strength 8 weapon. They're kind of playable if you can utilize this, but more than likely you're not going to use it. I was thinking you can throw this on your eradicators with your biologist. Next thing you know, you are increasing that melta weapon to a AP5 weapon, hitting on your twos for your single rifle guys. Your multi-meltas are now hitting on threes, and then if they're stationary, you're hitting on twos with them as well. But you're essentially just punching right through things. So it's not it's good. You can throw this thing on aggressors as well with similar effects. Only you hit that nearest target. You already got 1 AP because right now most of their weapons are strength. Besides the flamers, are strength 4, no AP, damage 1. Now you got they're hitting on whatever twos, and you got a negative 1 to 2 AP if it's negative 2 AP if it's the nearest target, and now you've got some serious firepower. Plus they're with their gauntlets, they're twin linked as well, so throw that with biologist or something on there as well, and the next thing you know, you got some spicy units. So this one right here is very exciting. It almost makes me want to run like a captain of some sort so that I can utilize this twice and really take out units, because you couple that with like a target. I mean, you can do all kinds of things with this thing. I've kind of experimented with it with eradicators, and what you end up doing is you're turning in, because eradicators are very hit or miss. So even if you're running like a 6 brick of them, what do you got? A possibility of like 8 shots because the multi-meltas, but then their BS is not very good if you move them, especially with the multi-meltas anyway. It's like 4+, but then you're coupling it with this thing, and now the math starts working out a little bit different, and you're starting to pump out whatever, at least 4 hits, and you're pumping out 12 to 20 wounds, and I mean, next thing you know, this is some serious firepower. We got calculated feint, which is also really cool, as then you can, your opponent's charge phase are going to charge you, you can move. If you're a Phobos unit, it's 6 inches. If you're a non-Phobos unit, you D6 it. That could be the difference between getting charged and not getting charged. And you want to play that one though. So like I said, we're going a little more in depth here. You want to play that one a little differently, because what guys were saying in the beginning, if you did this and they couldn't declare a charge. Well, they can if you go outside that 12 inches. Now, what you do here, if you got a Phobos unit, now if you might have to be a little more cheeky with it. If you have like a regular infantry unit, and you roll a d6, and let's say you get a 3 or whatever, you put them as far away as you possibly can. So if they had a 9-inch charge and you got a 3 on that, you move that unit back to right at 12, so they can't redeclare a charge to a different unit if it's possible, so that they have to roll hot. You know what I mean? That's how you play that. So there's no redeclaring, they just have to roll hot, and what you do is you just minimize that. You pretty much get that unit kind of stuck, and then you come back and hit them. Guerrilla tactics is also a fun one. I like this, and this is one that you have to read the fine print, because there's some units that you see, it says at the end of your opponent's fight phase, you can pick up 2 Phobos units or scout units, or 1 Adeptus Astartes infantry unit, and they go into strategic reserve, and you just bring them back the next turn somewhere. If they got the deep strike ability, this is what I was talking about earlier with like the Phobos Lieutenant, you pick up 2 Phobos units, bam. If you run an Invictor Tactical War Suit, which like I said is the best tank shock unit in the game in my opinion, he is Phobos keyword, you can pick him up and you can throw him around the board a little bit. So you can get a little bit spicy with this. I like it because let's say you're running the scouts too. Scouts you can pick up when they're 6 inches away from an enemy unit. And more than likely, if you're that close and they like fail a charge or something, you can pick them up. Let's say somehow, some way they got within like 4 inches or whatever, and you can't utilize that anymore. With this you can, because it's only the 3 inches. So I mean, it's situational, but if you know these things, you can utilize them in certain areas. And like it says in here, you can pick 1 infantry unit. So let's say you got that blade driven deep, and all of a sudden things are going sideways with them, and it's going to get into a fight that you don't want to get into. Bam, you pick them up, you pull them out, they go into strategic reserve. Bam, you might even want to do that anyway, because if you set up, maybe you set up a defense in depth, that's what we call it in the military, where you have different layers of your defense. So they're punching through whatever you have there. Maybe it's scouts, that's a good screening unit. You screen up, because you infiltrate them too. You scout them up, screen up. You have your, like me, I got eradicators, or maybe you put them a blood driven deep. They're up there. They fire, fire, fire. Next turn, your opponent comes in and he demolishes your scouts, and your guys are next, right? So at the end of his fight phase, just go and just pick them up, get them off the board, save you some hurt, and you've sabotaged that, and you have other units that are ready to kind of strike on them. Then you bring them on somewhere else. Long story short, that's the end of that. So that's the Vanguard Spearhead detachment. Some units that I like in this, and everybody's talked about it pretty much: aggressors, terminators. These are for blade driven deep type things, getting them up the board, because you can get these guys up the board and actually do something with them. You can even run, like with that guerrilla tactics, you know, some of the heavier units. But for me, here's what I'm doing right now. And I'm experimenting. I got eradicators, I got some aggressors, I have a 10 brick of jump pack intercessors with a chaplain, and I'm kind of gonna situationally either sometimes, depending on what army you're going against, you put that blade driven deep on him, you put the jump pack intercessors up the board, you then rush up 12, and then you're in combat, if you play that right. Now, how you play that is also where you deploy, because if you deploy too early and the enemy can really see you, then he maneuvers around it. But if you use that later on to where he's put some units and you can see weak spots in his lines, you put that, then you use the blade driven deep. Anyway, I'm running scouts. You want to run at least a unit of scouts. You want to run, you can run eliminators. I'm running eliminators. I got 2 tanks still, because I like tanks, but I've been going back and forth running a repulsor executioner. I'm running 2 vindicators right now. I might throw in a different tank later, either a reaper or maybe the repulsor executioner, depending on how I'm running the aggressors. Because I'm just having fun with the list. I was going to put an executioner, run 3 aggressors in there, come in a strategic reserve, blast, 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 drop them off. If they're not doing anything, pick them up, throw them on round 3 in the backfield, while the executioner goes in and kind of blasts around. Maybe he gets killed, maybe he doesn't. Take some of the heat off the Vindicators. Vindicators blow things up. I have Shrike with 10 Vanguard vets. I know I'm talking fast, but we're almost 20 minutes in. I have Shrike with 10 Vanguard vets. He's anchoring me because this is Raven Guard. If you wanted to get real spicy and you wanted to run a different chapter, because actually the best way to utilize this is not Raven Guard. It's actually running it like an Ultramarines, because you can farm CP. You can turn other units into deep strike units. If you have like that, what is it, Ventress, that guy with the Calgar, now you're farming CP, and you got a pretty good unit that you can attach to aggressors or whatever. Then you got Uriel, who allows you to turn another unit into a deep strike unit. So you do that with your aggressors, you're picking them up, you're throwing them back. But anyway, we're running Raven Guard. So I got Shrike, I got 10 Vanguard vets. So we got that going on. We got the Eliminators, we got the Scouts, we got, what else we got up there? We got Eradicators, a 6 brick of Eradicators with Biologists. We're still debating on what we're doing, if we're running a Gravis Captain or if we're running something else. Oh, I got a Lieutenant with a combi weapon with the Shadow War. My Biologist has the Blade Driven Deep. We're also looking at running maybe a Phobos Lieutenant with the Ghost Cloak or whatever, or we will throw a captain in somewhere, and so that we can utilize some rites of battle in that Strike from the Shadows. Well, we got Inceptors, a 6 brick of Inceptors. I'm running Plasmas, but hey, Bolters aren't bad either. So, you know, whatever you feel best, because the Bolters, if you Strike from the Shadows, now you got a Strength 5 weapon. They're hitting on 2s with, if you got a 3 brick or a 6 brick, so 3 shots apiece, potentially 8 shots at Strength 5, not -1 anymore, -2 AP with Strike from Shadows, flats 2d6 or 2 damage. But let's face it, CP is like a rare. It's scarce sometimes. So I like to run the Plasmas because you already got the 2 AP, flat 2 with the Strength 7. Granted, you're losing a shot, and with the Bolters, you have this possibility of sustained 2s. If you throw that, you can actually fish for 6s if you throw that 2+. So let's say you put Strike from the Shadows on with the Bolter guys, you're rolling your hit rolls, and you're throwing this on the Oath target, right? That's the other caveat. So if you plan this out right, Oath target, then you're re-rolling hits. So you might just roll for 6s on the first roll, and then you're like, okay, well, I know these are hits, but they're not 6s because they're sustained 2s. So you set those aside, you can pick up and you try to get some more 6s. and you're hitting on 2s anyway, so bam, you do that, and next thing you know, you're putting down some real firepower on these guys. Anyway, there's some thoughts. You can actually build, you know, this gives you some flexibility to build around, but I'm just throwing that out there. The other than Raven Guard, if you didn't want to run Shrike, you could run Dark Angels. That's probably what I would do, because then you put Azrael, or I like Ultramarines. I'd probably end up doing that because I like the ability of putting another unit in Deep Strike, or giving him Deep Strike. But you could run Azrael and CP farm, and then run the Knights or something other. The other thing this does with your tanks too, you think about your tanks running around, -1 hit plus cover. It's not bad. So is there better options, detachments that will exemplify certain units? Yes, but this one gives you a lot of fun little plays, and should be good for scoring. Like I've talked about before, Firestorm's probably one of the better ones for scoring, but this one is fun. You have no excuse not to score a lot, and if you play it right, this is a thinking man's detachment, so you have to be able to think, and you can score pretty high with this, I think. So we're gonna run this, we're gonna have some fun, and we're gonna see what we can do. Anyway, I'll talk to you later. Peace.